what is Partners in the Gospel? How do we get here? Just a couple overview pieces, keep in mind. One, the Archdiocese of Seattle, for those that may not know, is all of Western Washington. So from the Canadian border down to the Columbia River, middle of the Cascades to the coast, all right? It's about 175 parishes and missions and stations, right, throughout the Archdiocese. We are one of those. There's also I think it's almost 60 Catholic elementary schools. There's 14 Catholic high schools. There's Catholic hospitals, CCS, right, kind of for the needs of the poor, et cetera. So we have a lot of ministry and resources in this Archdiocese. And lots of people, right, because the population keeps growing and we have people, all sorts of different cultural backgrounds, et cetera. About a year and a half ago or so, the Archbishop asked for kind of a discernment and a plan for us to figure out the best way for us to be stewards of what we have, right? All the wonderful things that we have. So that, in the end, it's kind of, the short version is it's a better equal distribution of workload. That's how I would describe it, okay? And the best way you could understand this in your mind is that, so I'm the one priest here, right? And we see, it's 2,000 households and I have a school, okay? Well, there's also one priest at a parish that sees 300 people total all weekend at their parish with no school or anything. So I use that as an example of that's not an equal distribution of workload, right? Now, it's not spot on, of course, all the way around the Archdiocese because we got lots of different types of communities. And we have urban, right, like Seattle and Tacoma. We have suburban, like where we're at, right? And then we also have rural places. So this Archdiocese kind of has the whole gamut, right, by way of parishes and communities that gather together. So the Archbishop asked that we would go through a process to discern over time what's the best way for us to be stewards of the resources that we have, because we have so many ministries, so that we can carry out the mission the best we can. We hired a consultative group, Catholic consultative group out of Minnesota called Partners Edge. They came in and looked at all the parishes and missions of the Archdiocese. And then imagine all the parishes like us, and hopefully most of you know where St. John Vianney is over in Finn Hill, right? So imagine going around the Archdiocese and be you got all these parishes, and then you start drawing circles around them, right? Be and these 3 parishes are going to be together, and these 2, and these whatever. So most of them make sense geographically, as well as trying to balance out the resources so that every parish family is roughly between 1,500 and 4,000 households, as opposed to having one parish that has 200 households and another one like us who has 2,000, right? So then we kind of partner together so we can best carry out the ministry of the church. The initial draft went through about 15 different edits, okay? So I'm part of the oversight committee, which is made up of priests and lay people and sisters and deacons. The Presbyteral Council reviewed it. The parishioners reviewed it and gave feedback from a lot of different parishes. We made all these adjustments and went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. What happened on Friday, and kind of into effect now, is that the Archbishop finally said, okay, no more drafts over this last year. These are the final parish families, right? This is what they're going to be starting July 1 so that we can all collaborate and help together, right, in different ways. The Archdiocese of Cincinnati, sounds random I'd be talking about this, but maybe go Bengals if somebody's from Cincinnati, right? But they went through a process. They're kind of the similar size to our Archdiocese, and they went through a process like this about 6 or 7 years ago with Partners Edge and this whole thing. So we've actually been in collaboration with them around best practices, how should we go about this, discern the best way to use resources, and also the process, right? So what happens on July 1, so we've had a year to kind of look at how can we do this and best use resources. So starting July 1, new parish families go into effect. And then over a 3-year time span, like us and St. John Vianney, will become one parish. Most likely with 2 worship sites, right? So this church will still be here, St. John Vianney will still be there. We look at the different masses and times and priests, et cetera, et cetera. The joke has been to parishioners, I said, they're well, Father, I'm sure they'll send you another priest. And my response is always only if they give me another parish. And so here it is, right? So we will have 2 priests in this parish family. There'll be a pastor and a parochial vicar, right? There'll be an assistant priest who's around to help. And I'm just here to tell you on the ground, my life would be better if even with St. John Vianney, if I had a full-time priest helping. Okay? It's also a way for us to look at our staff, right? Kind of, do we need 2 RCIA directors, for example, or could we have 1? Right? Our youth ministers, we might keep a youth minister there and 1 here, who knows? Faith formation, administrative staff. Those are the kind of things that will be sorted out over the 3-year period, as well as the pastoral councils will become 1. The finance council will become 1. And it's all under 1 pastor. The parish family, right? And you have to think to yourself, like, we are one of the easiest parish families. And this is why. Because we are partnering with just 1 other parish with no school and no cultural community with like Vietnamese or Spanish or Korean or something like that. Like, this is one of the easiest ones. Actually, the whole East Side Deanery were some of the easiest parishes to partner because they're all so big to a certain degree. So all the pastors of the East Side got together and looked at this, and there wasn't many edits to the East Side Deanery, just so you know. All the pastors looked at it like, yeah, this makes sense. And just so you know, on the east side, St. Brendan and Bothell will be with Woodinville, St. Teresa, Calcutta. Our neighbor, St. Jude, is with Duval. They're also picking up Carnation. Sacred Heart in Clyde Hill is with St. Monica's, as it already is under Father Nagel. And then St. Louise is with St. Madeleine Sophie, right, in Factoria. Right, so there are things that make sense in general. One of the ones that was brought up for us here at Holy Family was, well, it would make more sense for us to partner with St. Jude in Redmond because we have more population base kind of between these things, and that's the flow. We, in the end, did not do that because we were trying to have parish families where you have kind of 1 bigger parish with 1 or 2 or 3 smaller parishes. St. Jude is like 1,200 households. St. John Vianney is like 700. Right? So then you have 1 bigger parish with Duval and Carnation, and then we partner with a neighbor that's over here. So there's no perfect way to do it, right? So you can make an argument for that. Yeah, the flow could go this way or that way. It's fine. I encourage you to go over to St. John Vianney sometime. You can go over there and hang out. I've been over there for various ministries. They're great, nice, right? And the first year is actually just kind of like get to know your neighboring parish, right? So there'll be socials and events, and we'll do things together that people can participate in if they want. But specifically, too, really the pastoral councils, the finance councils, the staff, right? The outreach commissions, all those kind of things will start to come together, and then we start to figure out who we are. Then, over the 3 years, we discern, well, what do we need in Kirkland for the Catholic Church here for the next 20 years, let's say? Until Jesus comes again, hopefully later tonight, right? And then we can wrap this thing up. But until he does, right, we're still here doing the good work of the Lord. And so it's that opportunity for us to just sit and discern, well, what do we want this parish family to be? He's a cute one right there. What's up, buddy? He's pumped up about it too. So keep this in mind. Every parish family gets to discern whatever they want to do. So there's no one package, okay? So I'll give you a couple examples, right? Like us and St. John Vianney. Well, most likely, we're going to have 2 priests, so it's not going to impact the Mass schedule initially. But then over time, we might figure out like, well, how many people? It's a big church over there, right? And they have 3 Masses, and some of them are a little lighter. And it's like, do we really need 3 Masses? Well, maybe we could just have 2 there and then 4 here. And then you look at, daily Mass and staffing. Okay, fine. But that's us. Well, where I used to serve in North Seattle, it's 3 parishes with 3 schools. And one of the schools is big and 2 of the schools are small. Like on the edge kind of small, right? So they will have to discern, do we need both of these Catholic schools in this neighborhood, right? The churches, where I used to be too, are much smaller population. So, over the course of the weekend, we see between 300 to 500 people total at the three masses. So then they have to discern, do we need all these worship sites? Including things like, $3 million of seismic upgrade to things, right? Like, where should we be good stewards of our resources? So there's other places that might discern things where they're like, well, maybe we don't need all these Catholic schools. We could combine, right, partner together, including the parishes, and figure out the worship sites. The buildings, the schools or the churches or whatever, the plan is they're going to be repurposed for other Catholic ministries. So it could be used for like a new Bethlehem Center, or it could be used for like housing for young adults who teach at Catholic schools, or it could be used for priest retirement or whatever it is, right? So we can be creative around, well, what are the things that we would like to be able to do, but we have all these other kind of institutional investments where we can carry out the mission in a different way. So that's another place to give you a sense, right? There's other places that are more rural, right, where there's missions and that sort of thing. Well, they're going to have to discern, kind of masses and times, etc. The most radical thing that could happen out of Partners in the Gospel, just to give you a sense, right? Like one of the parish families is Mary Queen of Peace in Sammamish, with Issaquah, where I used to be the pastor, and then Snoqualmie. So the most radical thing that could happen, this would be difficult to pull off, it's going to take more than 3 years. They discern, we're going to close all 3 of these sites and build one massive parish. And we're going to gather together on the weekend, there's going to be 3,000 people there, and that's what we're going to do. So that's the most kind of radical thing that a parish family could do. But you can only imagine, buying land and building. I mean, I get it. But that's the type of thinking that could happen through the discernment process. So there's no one way that the parish family has to become one parish. As I mentioned here, it's likely that it's probably going to be we're one parish with 2 worship sites, right? And then this actually kind of frees us up. I was using different examples in the talks. Some of you know the campus pretty well. On the north end of the campus, we have like these old storage facilities up there. Some of them are a little bit better than others, et cetera. And so there's been plans where we're like, well, should we spend like $1.5 million to build like new storage facilities and like put it up against the school and it's safer and all this stuff? Well, now, if I'm the pastor of here and St. John Vianney, well, I could go over there and be like, well, what do you guys have? Maybe we shouldn't use our money to do this, and we could partner together, and we could use storage over there, or do outreach here or there, et cetera. Do you all get the idea around this, right? So it actually provides us with more flexibility about what we want to do. It's more to manage as the pastor, but you also have assistant priests, right, to help you, and then the staff and volunteers, et cetera. The parish families that start July 1, over 3 years, will then eventually become one new parish with a new patron saint. And you have the option to also retain the names of the local parishes as well, depending on the circumstance, right, of whatever it is. So I've been using kind of a joke, but St. Polycarp never gets a good play, right? St. Polycarp, it's kind of a strange thing. But imagine we get together and we discern, well, St. Polycarp's our saint. This is who we're at. This is our patron saint. Well, it could be St. Polycarp Parish at Holy Family and at St. John Vianney, including the school, right? So like branding for the school, right? Holy Family School. Okay, fine, right? This won't impact our school that much because our school's healthy. They're doing fine, right? Then we'll just find ways to partner with St. John Vianney. But that is the plan, that we will arrive at one new canonical parish, because the parish is not the buildings, it's the people and the geographical area. Now, I know obviously people get attached to all these, it makes sense. But so we'll discern that together, right? It's not like this isn't just going to happen like all of a sudden. Part of the Archbishop's plan of all of this, which by the way, I fully support what we're doing in the Archdiocese. Of course, I'm on the oversight committee and we're fine. I'm not just saying that out of obedience. Like, I actually wish we did this like 20 years ago before I was ordained a priest. Because that's why I've had to have multiple jobs, or when I got sent here, they're like, well, and people oftentimes will think, well, is this like consolidation because we don't have enough people or this and that? No. Is this just because of the priest? No. It's a little bit of those things, because we have to figure out how many priests can be pastors. And then also it's about, like, we have lots of Catholics in the Archdiocese. The demographics have shifted in some places, though. You know what I mean? Like in the suburbs, there's that one for you. That's all right, he's down there. In the suburbs, when they built these parishes, they're all, 15 minutes from each other, whatever. And so the suburban parishes are kind of healthier, quote unquote. The places in Seattle where I was before, all the parishes were 2 miles from each other because they built them historically over time, right? And then you're like, well, how do we keep this place running, right? It's just, anyways, it's a different dynamic. And then the rural places have their own spots, like Skagit Valley or Lewis County, you name it, right? But then they'll discern these things over time. So it's not a quick thing, but the Archbishop says, well, here's the parish families, and then you all discern what needs to happen, right, by way of ministries and resources, etc., so that it kind of comes from the ground up, as opposed to the Archbishop, or like a couple key members of his staff, just going around and being like, we're just going to do this, we're going to do this. You see what I mean? So it's kind of, we're trying to work together as we discern, hey, what do we want to do to carry out the mission? Because we have lots of resources. The question is, are they all channeled into the most effective kind of spots, right? And to a certain degree, that's what the church has been doing for 2,000 years, right? The priests, right? A word on the priests. So how many priests serve in the Archdiocese of Seattle? Well, it's about 165 or 175, depending on the number. And who are the priests that serve? I'm one. So I'm one of those, okay? A number of them are from religious orders. Dominicans, Benedictines, Jesuits, right? And some of them are pastors, some of them are not, right? They serve, they have their own dynamic. Some of the priests are senior priests, like Father Steve Zeman when he was here, right? And he's still doing okay, by the way, everybody, but not, he's like 96 or something, right? So senior priests who can take an assignment or not, right? Who can kind of help out a little bit if they want to. There's also priests that are on loan from other countries, Africa, Latin America, Philippines, this and that, etc. We've found overall that it is very difficult for them to be a pastor of one of our parishes. Because to be a pastor of a parish in America, you're like the CEO of a big nonprofit, right? As well as the preaching, teaching, and baptizing, all this stuff, right? And so they come out of a different mindset, right, of how church is run in those countries. And then the other group of priests, and I'm not even to pastors yet, if you haven't noticed this, okay, is like newly ordained priests, or priests that have health issues, or priests that no longer want to be pastors. They're like, I'm totally stressed out. I don't want to run this anymore. I don't have the gifts to be a pastor, right, guys? And we've talked to some of the priests to be like, well, what do you want to do under Partners in the Gospel? And a number of the guys are like, I just want to help. I don't want to be the guy in charge. So the goal is with Partners in the Gospel, and we have a little buffer, but it's even this is pretty tight. Like Father Nagel or myself, there's going to be about 60 of us, 60 pastors of guys who are kind of of a certain age, background, skill set, diocesan priests mostly. There's a couple religious orders around, etc., who will be the pastors, and then we're going to assign all these other priests as assistants to them. So part of the discernment along the way, we got cute kids around everywhere over here. We're going to have a cute off later. Part of the discernment of the priest personnel board that I'm also on, you might have read your little Northwest Catholic. There's a little article about that I was nominated and elected to right when I came to Holy Family. So that's my other part-time job here, right? We've been looking over the last 6 months, not just of the assignments of the priests that are coming up for their terms, but every single priest assignment in the Archdiocese. Because we're trying to take these parish families to be like, well, who's going to be the best pastor for this family? And who's the priest that will work the best with this pastor? Because believe it or not all the priests get along, in different ways, right? So we got different personalities, whatever. So we're trying to match all these things up. It is likely that about half of the pastors will be transferred to a new parish family starting July 1. We will figure that out, and we're still in the process right now, kind of dialogue with guys and discerning and trying to figure out. But now that we have the final parish families, we're like, okay, this is where it's going, and then you need a Spanish guy here or somebody who knows something about Catholic schools over here or whatever, right? So we'll know what all the priest assignments will be probably like mid-April, like after Easter or so. And then those assignments will go into effect at the same time, July 1, right, for who will be assigned where. So say a little prayer of the Spirit's guidance for the Priest Personnel Board. I actually have a 2-day retreat in about a week with the bishops and a couple of the other priests, the vicar for clergy, because we're trying to finalize. We're getting closer to finalizing, being like, all right, this guy said yes here, and then he's not sure about this. This one's not going to work. It's kind of a domino effect for those that like these kind of systems and structures. So, yes. So we will know who the pastor will be here. Could be me, could be somebody else, including parochial vicars as well. Think in your mind that there's an advantage and a disadvantage to keeping a pastor, okay? The advantage is there's some familiarity, right, of one of the parishes. You kind of build off of that, and there's some spots where that makes the most sense. The disadvantage is, will the other parish always feel like a second class kind of thing? Because they're like, well, it's almost like, well, which pastor should be chosen, right, from these 3 parishes? And then the idea is like, well, if you have a new pastor, it's like a fresh start, right, for everybody. And then like, yeah, we're going to be a new parish family, et cetera. So we're trying to make it so it's about half, because we want to provide some stability in different pockets around the archdiocese, but then other places where we're going to need someone else to go and serve. And so people always ask me, so what do you want to do, Father? I told them, I said, I will go wherever the greatest need is in the archdiocese. So if it's here, and I gave the pros for that, this is why I'll be here, I'll be happy to serve here. If it's somewhere else, then wherever you want me to go. You know what we call that, everybody? Holy indifference. Yep. Oh, you caught it. See, from the homily tonight, see? I didn't hit it during the homily, but you're with it. That's why I mentioned I just pepper that in there. How do we be flexible? Yeah. So we'll see where the need will arise. But that's, that's how we got to be. And this supersedes our current assignments, right? Most pastors are assigned for a 6-year term, right? So I'm year 3 into my 6 years. Well, Partners in the Gospel has superseded that, right? So the Archbishop has asked us all to be available, if it makes sense, to be transferred and go here or there, et cetera. And that's, well, welcome to the vow of obedience, everyone, right, as it is. So we will see what will happen over the next couple months. I will say, just since this is the last talk I have to give, if I'm going to be transferred somewhere, just meditate on this, everybody. It's going to be a place that's larger with less resources. I can tell you right now, because I know all these things. Right? I know I need to shoot for mediocrity. Yeah, that's what I shoot for. Yeah. So, just to give you a sense, right? Because there's some parish families that are like 4,500 households with like multiple language communities and schools and stuff, right? And then there's some, like we have a lot of resources, et cetera, but there's some that are a little easier than others, et cetera. Some are smaller, but you get the idea. So just say a little prayer of the Spirit's guidance for all the discernment that we still have to do, and all the priests that are kind of rolling around all these ideas right now too, because they've been kind of called and go, what do you think? And guys are kind of, And then someone asked very charitably this morning, like, well, what can we do right now? And I was like, just say a prayer, right? Because think of all the different parishes and parishioners right now. And some of them are really, like here in Kirkland, to be honest with you, most people are like, yeah, okay. You know what I mean? Like it's not completely out of nowhere. They're like, yeah, we can partner with them, or I know some people, we'll figure it out the way. But there's always something. But there's other parish families where they are less excited about it. And there's not a ton, but there are a couple parish families, because of logistics and the amount of priests that will be assigned to it, that they will have to change some of their mass times starting July 1. Because, there's only, if you got 2 priests and there's 3 Saturday vigils, you can't bilocate, So there's a couple parish families like that where they're like, this and that. So say prayers for all the parishioners and parishioners so that we follow the Spirit. Like, okay, this is what we can do. We have lots of resources. We're just trying to figure out the best way to allocate them. And then pray for the Spirit's guidance for all the assignment of pastors. The vicars will sort that piece out, But the pastors, it's a big step, right? Because they got to come in. So I've been even in my mind, I'm like, well, if I'm going to be here and we're St. John Vianney, okay. If I got to go somewhere else, I got to regroup right now because it's like, here we go again, welcome to my priesthood of 18 years, everybody. This has been every time. They're just like, what else we got around here? There it is. And that's what we have to do, right? Because we're trying to, in the end, follow Jesus, offer the sacraments, right? I mean, that's what this comes down to, and then have vibrant parish communities that can spread the gospel, right? And then the priests are going to collaborate with all the laity around those things as well, staff. Any quick questions, real quick, before what I've covered? No, only certain dioceses. So the local bishop, good question. So there's a number of dioceses that have been through a similar type of process. Some of them handled in different ways. Most of them are kind of more East Coast and like Midwest type of stuff. Places that used to have big Catholic populations, but have maybe moved or whatever. And some of you that know other parts of the country. I mean, there's some place where it's like a Catholic church every block, right? Because that's how it was. So other dioceses have done this, but it just depends on that local diocese and that bishop, what they're asking for. This is, because I mean, I've been working in the diocese for 20 years now. This is not a new idea, right? For us around here. This wasn't like this just came out of nowhere, you know. Well, I'll give you an example. Sacred Heart and then St. Monica with Father Nagel. Well, the reason we had to set that up is because we were like, we're out of pastors. We got nobody to send to Sacred Heart in Bellevue. And then we reached out to Father Nagel. We're like, hey, buddy. Like I called him. I was like, we need you to all to take Sacred Heart. But we'll give you a vicar from another country who's going to help you out. And he said, yeah, I know. I was on priest personnel board too. I get it. I'll do it. So now, instead of like just asking some random spots to do it, we're all doing it. Right? And then that goes the same with all the other resources. And so there is an opportunity in this, even though it always brings up questions, anxiety, etc. Yeah. So our diocese is doing this. Yeah. Question? Is this going to happen only in the U.S. or is it going to be? Well, it's up to every bishop and the local diocese in different countries or whatever they want to do, right? Because they have different dynamics. This is just, we're just going through this in our archdiocese here. Right? Other dioceses have done something similar to this where they have to kind of strategically plan and kind of how do we, change the stewardship kind of model? But yeah, it's really up to each diocese what they want to do. Yeah. Both in the U.S. and other countries, et cetera. Question here? Yes. So, and it is on one level, it's consolidation of parishes because we're going to join together, right? Instead of 100 and I think, not missions and stations. There's like 130 parishes or something, right? So we're going to try to get down to 60 parishes, right? They can involve missions or otherwise. So we are consolidating from that standpoint. And there's things that we've learned from like the Archdiocese of Cincinnati. They were like, this worked well, this didn't work well. An example of that is so Father Vu is the pastor over at St. John Vianney. So what they said were things like, well, don't leave the one pastor and then leave the guy who was a pastor as now the vicar in the other parish. You see, I mean, just like normal things, right? And then there's some spots, of course, where they have to make some difficult decisions, right? Like, do we really need this church in this place where grandma built it or whatever, right? Those kind of spots too. But those things, I don't know. It doesn't surprise me. We have to kind of do that. So most places, if you think about it, actually, they're going to be better if they can actually enter into it. Because they're not, we're a big parish here. I get it, right? But some of these other parishes, if they can enter into it, they're like, oh, we don't have to just try to do it all on our own, right? We're not siloed. So then our outreach ministries can work together. Our evangelization ministries can work together. Our youth groups can work together, et cetera, right? It's like, well, why don't we all work together? We're all Catholics, right? As opposed to we're just trying to, put it all together on our own, right? We experience that a little less here just because we have so many resources in our parish. Good question. Any other quick questions? Logistics or otherwise? Yes. So in I'll tell you, this is the last little funsy. Since we're all just here hanging out, these are the kind of things I get. I never seem to get extra pay for them, but I get lots of extra things. So on Friday, after I was celebrating like a high school retreat mass over at Blanchette for them, because these are the other things that priests have to do, because we don't have enough priests to cover these things, Or when I have to run to Evergreen Hospital and anoint people because we don't have priests as chaplains at hospitals, right? So we do all these other things outside of the parish, okay? So then the communications director of the Archdiocese called me on Friday afternoon. It was like, "Oh, Father Bryant," and I know her well, of course. And she was like, "Well, the Seattle Times is looking to do an article, and I would like to send them to a parish to talk to a pastor. Can it be you?" "Of course, Helen, whatever you need." So last night, a reporter came from the Seattle Times. There's an article in the Seattle Times. It's pretty reasonable. It's short, which is good. So she came and interviewed me last night. She's Catholic from Kansas City, this young adult gal. So it was kind of an interesting thing. So I was like, oh, okay, what's going on? And, sometimes the Seattle Times has some angles towards the church, so I was like, oh, it's all falling apart. And I was like, no, it's not. Actually, we're just trying to reallocate the right resources. So we're kind of working together in this bigger picture. So it was fine. And then the photographer was here at the 11 a.m. Mass today, like wandering around and this and that. So we're famous, everybody. They're the Holy Family Kirkland. So I told the communications director, you owe me at least one beer for this. How about that? So, yeah. So anyways, glad you all are able to be here for a couple minutes tonight. There'll be more information online. There's Q&A and all that stuff if you have extra questions. I probably ended up talking to this weekend probably about 200 parishioners after all the masses total. But you're now some of the educated parishioners. So it's your role to help me go out. So when you're talking to different people, they're not sure, well, this is what it's going to be. And kind of just, more than anything, just be like, it'll be fine. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be over time. It's not like all of a sudden things are going to change. The priest assignments, that might look a little bit different depending on the parish, right? But then most of the stuff, it's going to be over time. We're going to kind of grow into this and what it's going to look like. And then we're going to be the church together. So, but you all can help me in that as well. So let's offer all the efforts of the church as we say together, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. May Almighty God bless you all, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you all later. Have a great week. Thanks. Great to see you.